traffic jams and loss of loved ones, in peace and war alike, one thing remains constant: man's search for meaning. We seek to learn to understand the universe of its own accord, of its own merits. We seek to comprehend what it is to understand, which is a topic that was originally covered by, well, originally I would say Aristotle, but most recently and most famously David Hume in his essay An Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding. When we speak of human understanding, we have to recognize that we're speaking to a subset of understanding. There's a model of the universe that can be built conceptually, and there's a model of the universe that can be built conceptually in a way that can be grasped by humans. And so we have to go through the process of reduction or simplification, which is an alchemical process, very much so, to be able to present the universe to people in a way that is manageable, in a way that can be held in the pocket, right? So like, how do you fit the universe into your pocket? Well, you start by fitting it into your mind. It is no coincidence, of course, that when we look at maps of neural synaptic networks in the brain, they mirror very closely the maps of galaxies and astronomical bodies and mental bodies seem to share a template of creation. This is not coincidence. You can see here on page 61 of the Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding by David Hume, the philosopher, if he be consistent, must apply reasoning to the actions and volitions of intelligent agents. So, when you are interfacing with anything that can be considered rational, you must also consciously activate your rational instinct. You probably already do that when you interact with humans, right? When I'm at Dunkin' Donuts getting my morning coffee, I assume that the person making my coffee is rational. I assume that they have thought patterns, that they have motivations, that they have aspirations and goals. I assume that they've been dreaming. I hope that they've been dreaming well. This is what it is like to be reasoning as you reason with. Of course, I know that I am reasoning because I am the one observing. So if there's anything I can know in this lifetime, it is that I reason, which is why René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. At the end of the day, the surest proof you have of your consciousness, the surest proof you have of your consciousness and thus your existence is not your body, it's your mind. And so we interface agent to agent, reason to reason, and in doing so, we grow. Our reason learns from the reason in front of us. David Hume, in this Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding, describes the 4 ways that he considers the mind to manage data. But to be quite honest, there's this trend after Aristotle to just try to make a list of 4 and call that sufficient for an understanding. So like, Aristotle gave us the 4 causes, David Hume tried to give us the 4 transpositions of the mind. To be honest, I've already found several that he didn't mention, such as creation. He didn't mention that the mind creates information. David Hume considers creation to be synthesis or composite data, but that's when you're creating from experience. When you're creating from raw sensory data, especially as concerns ultraviolet and infrared spectrums of cogitation, you are creating a lot more fluidly than the composite mediums that David Hume would have you believe, but we're not here to debate. Right, so I reason, you reason. Therefore, we know for sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that we are here. But what is here? turn you away to the music for just a moment. Slip into deep, consistent rhythms of breathing. And consider how it is that your mind reasons and what it is that we are reasoning with. When I come back, reality. And we're back. Let's go ahead and bring the music down just a little bit. So, during the break, which by the way, how was that break? Are you reasoning? Is your mind awake? Good. Keep it open. The mind is a channel of communication. It transmits data. It is electric and it is sensory. And while it is definitely true that the mind primarily perceives its own electricity, I find it to be the case that a quiet mind can perceive the electricity of others. And so this is how telepathy essentially functions. Is you bring your system to such a serene state of calmness that other people's electrical impulses can be detected by your system. We can see some of this evidence in David Hume's Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding, which will be our work for today. Should it be said that, from a number of uniform experiments, we infer a connection between the sensible qualities and the secret powers? So, when we speak of the sensible qualities, we're talking about not just sensible as in reasonable, but sensible as in the actual senses, like very much so the human senses. These are the sensible qualities that we're discussing. So a sensible quality of an apple might be its sugar content or like its carbohydrate content, right? That's like a sensible quality of it if you're using logic. But a different sensible quality of that apple is its color. It's a red apple, or it's a green apple, or it's a golden apple. So what we are inferring is a connection between the sensible qualities and the secret powers. What is David Hume referring to when he mentions the secret powers? During our first meditation, we ascertained that you are reasoning. If you can hear this, it means that you can reason. And if you reason, then you exist. As René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. So now we get to reasoning and sensible qualities. But I want to know more about the secret powers that David Hume is talking about. The secret powers that organize this universe. He says, I must confess, seems the same difficulty couched in different terms. So, David Hume believes that the struggles of consciousness are present in our sensible qualities as well as in the secret powers. I'm going to leave you to meditate on those secret powers for just a moment, and we'll be right back. Of existence. So far, we have learned two things. Number one, that we reason. Therefore we exist. We can be said to exist in a way that supersedes all simulation theories, by the way. Let's not waste any more time with simulation theory when we know reality to be real by virtue of its existence. It's such a simple argument, really. So we are real. Number two, we know that the world operates on sensible qualities and secret powers, that which can be seen and that which cannot be seen. So like, very much so, this world operates thanks to ultraviolet. You can't see ultraviolet, but you know that it is there. And so it is a secret power of the world, ultraviolet, because it is not visible. Of course, in instrumentation, devices, technology gives us access to these secret powers. So when we're looking for redeeming qualities in technology, the greatest one that I can think of is the fact that technology gives us access to the language of reality. If we program our technology to speak fluent nature and not fluent human. So, we've discovered two things. We are reasoning, and there are secret powers. Join us on this meditation, and in just a moment, we'll continue on to interpose these ideas and join them in a way that consolidates the sensible and the secret. Alright, philosophers, let's get back to work. We've proven two things. Number one, we reason. Number two, there is a secret power, an instrumentation, an inherent design to the universe, a secret reality that Hume is able to see the connection between the sensible qualities and the secret powers. He says, by what process of argumentation this inference is founded. In other words, how can we be sure that there is a corresponding secret reality? It's kind of interesting to consider, right? That you might be sitting in the middle of a room that to your senses is a room, but to reality is a furnace of creation with all of these instrumented bodies generating caloric metabolic processes and computers discharging electrical information along these invisible data lines, oftentimes operating along infrared and ultraviolet spectrum, such that an entity that is... Ooh, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Let's go ahead and prove first that we have senses. That's going to be very necessary. We know that we reason, and we know that there is a secret reality. That's our working hypothesis right now. There is a secret reality. So, how are we to detect realities? Well, that's what the senses are for. How do you prove that you have senses? If somebody asked you, hey, how many senses do you have? And then you listed them. And then they said, oh yeah, prove it. How would you prove that you have a sense of smell? How do you prove that you have a sense of sight, a sense of touch, a sense of taste, a sense of sound? And these are the 5 physical senses that we've been programmed to consider as superseding all others. But isn't thought also a sense, in the sense that you have to feel your own thoughts to be able to understand them? The work that the brain does of sending electric information along synaptic highways, in what senses is that a sense as well? So I actually find it to be the case, not that we struggle to prove that we have senses, but that we struggle to distinguish between what is a sense and what isn't. How are we supposed to prove that sight is a sense if we won't believe that insight is a sense? Nevertheless, we can prove now that we have senses, and so we can continue on. We have senses. They operate on discrete frequencies. Your eyes see red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, etc., the visible spectrum. But your eyes generally do not see ultraviolet or infrared. In fact, research for the break, I'm going to look up whether or not we have had medical cases of people being born with UV sensitive or IR sensitive eyes. So we have senses, they are discrete, and they operate on narrow frequencies, such as the eyes and the color spectrum. But a question arises. If something were composed completely of these invisible energies, could it be standing in front of you without you even being able to perceive it? This is kind of a tough one to grasp, but could an invisible agent be standing in front of you right now, and the reason you can't see them is because they're operating on the infrared or ultraviolet frequencies? This wasn't considered by Hume, so he can only provide proof of reality in the sense of uniform objects, which are endowed with powers and forces, as he says. So, Hume's world, a reminder, we are working through reality using David Hume's Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. He proves that the world exists by pointing out that there are objects with powers and forces in motion, such as a car, or children running on a playground, or a mother embracing a father. There's powers and forces in interplay that are creating these, we call them situations generally. But, I mean, everything that happened since the Big Bang has really just been one big situation. So, thesis. An entity composed entirely of infrared or ultraviolet energy could be standing in front of you, and you would not be aware of them, because they are not composed of visible light, but rather invisible light. I do believe that this is where the nature of mental illness makes itself known. A lot of people will claim to see things that make no sense, and of course we throw them into sanitariums and dope them up on all kinds of medications to try to get them to stop saying what it is that they see. But when you start taking human account as sacred, as empirical data, and stop discarding it for being non-instrumented, you start to find that humans have been crazy all along, but we've been right all along too. That's why there's so many accounts of these spiritual forces at work. And these accounts go all the way back to, good God, at least 6,000 years ago. 4,300 BC, we had the Indus River Valley meditators that were regularly taking trips to heaven. They would just astral project out of their body anytime they wanted. And they left us a record of how they did so. That's the Bhagavad Gita. And the Upanishads is their experiences, what they saw when they were up there. So this world, this sensory reality that we live in, they called it Maya. The Vedics called it Maya. That's the sensory world. But they knew that there's a suprasensory world as well. They call that Turiya, which is on the other side of the veil. The veil is your senses. In other words, as long as you continue to trust your senses over reality itself, it's like that's how you get stuck in Maya. When you say, I only trust my own senses, I will not listen to testimony of other people's accounts of miracles, for example. So, invisible forces moving all around us. That's certainly something to meditate on. So let's go ahead and do so. After the break, we'll wrap it up with Hume's Inquiry and speed you on to your days with some kind words and blessings. So, for those of you just joining us, we are discussing and meditating on the nature of the invisible forces. Take a moment to consider the Newtonian and theoretical forces that are at play all around you. From the metabolic processes churning inside your body to the astral furnaces raging above. Reality is beautiful, even the parts of it that are not visible. Could an entity composed entirely of infrared or ultraviolet light be standing back, philosophers. I've got some good news. I believe I've got a little key to help us ascertain what is secret, what is evident, and ultimately why it matters to know the difference. This is what philosophers have historically referred to as the problem of correspondence. So I'd like to here refer to this as the law of correspondence. Though it is originally written by David Hume, I believe that he was keying into the answer to a question before the question had even come up. When he says, similar sensible qualities will always be conjoined with similar secret powers. Furthermore, he says, you must confess the inference is not intuitive, neither is it demonstrative. Of what nature is it then? To say it is experimental is begging the question, for all inferences from experience suppose as their foundation that the future will resemble the past, and that similar powers will be conjoined with similar sensible qualities. In other words, we have an expectation that the universe is a rational agent. That's the law of correspondence. So, a little background. Historically, humans, especially human philosophers, fell prey to this paradox where they believed that humans are conscious, right? Because we are thinking and reasoning, and you had these like 1800s era philosophers being like, good God, man, of course I'm conscious. Like, can't you see I'm having a conversation with you? Like, they were so sure that they were conscious. That was a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, these predominantly like Victorian era Englishmen that really dominated Western modalities of thought as concerns philosophy, they turned such a critical eye to the world with their human-centric intelligence paradigm that they confused the world, really. They had the world believing that animals don't possess consciousness, that animals are, of course, only operating out of instinct, and that intelligence is a rational process that only human minds have. But of course, anybody who has a pet cat or a pet dog or a pet parrot can tell you that these animals, they do exhibit animated qualities of intellectual expression. They're not just responding to instinct. My dog doesn't just sleep and eat. He also questions, and he turns his head at things, and he looks at the sun sometimes and smiles. And they're so beautiful and so conscious. So the problem of correspondence is the law of correspondence, and the law of correspondence is that we must believe everything to be as cogent as we are, as intellectual as we are, as reasoning as we are. If we apply that as a maximal paradigm to the universe, then we start to see a very curious proof. The universe itself must be conscious. But wait, we had already proven that in the beginning of the episode when we mentioned that the galactic structures and the synaptic structures are identical. So if we know that the object of the universe is identical in structure to the object that is the brain, then we understand that the universe must be rational. And if we know the universe to be rational, then the question becomes, how does the universe think? We know how we think. We think through a series of electrical impulses. Your neurons, they twitch and they flex and they fire these data lines along synaptic channels, these little glimmers of electrical information that go from the prefrontal cortex to the rear lobe or occipital lobe or what have you. So your brain, when it's thinking, it's shooting little electrical information all over your brain, all over your mind. And these connections that it forms create your body of intelligence. Well, the universe is also shooting electrical signals everywhere. Strangely enough, it's called light, emanating light. Once you recognize that light is rational, that it carries information, which it literally does, it's at least got a numerical sequence, right? Light carries phi, which is 1.618. Yeah, 1.618 phi. So like, light is already carrying information. It's carrying the Fibonacci sequence expressed electrically as light. So then that's how the universe thinks, is by radiant starlight. And every star in the sky is like a neuron in your mind. That's essentially the law of correspondence. Let the course of things be allowed, hitherto ever so regular. That alone, without some new argument or inference, proves not that, for the future, it will continue so. He's speaking like old Englishman era, like, and herefore, therefore, and to do for, like, they were so, it was a way of gatekeeping language, really. They used all of these participles and sentence modifiers to over-academize their knowledge and make it a little less accessible. But essentially, all he's saying is that this argument stands until it no longer stands. And I am inclined to agree with our good man David Hume. See, we're here at 50 minutes. First episode. Great success. I feel confident now, declaring the following. I declare that we reason, therefore we are. I declare that there is a secret reality. It is made of forces and powers, as have been described by Sir Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and the rest. We have senses. This is our third proof today. We have senses. We have sight. We have sound. We have scent. We have taste. We have touch. And we have many more senses besides that. We have insight and intuition. We have cognitive maps. We have, good God, the light body itself is a sense. It's your sense of light. There's so many senses that are buried in the invisible secret reality. And the question that I'd like to leave you with, which we touched on previously, in the secret forces, and when we talk about the secret forces, we're describing like gravitation or magnetism. We can say that magnetism is a secret force because when you look at the magnet, it just kind of be standing still. But that magnet is actually doing a lot of work. You just can't see the work that the magnet is doing. These are the secret powers. These are the secret forces. Ultraviolet and infrared are part of the secret order of forces. We know ultraviolet is here. I got shades that can block it. We know that infrared is here. Your TV remotes work on that frequency. So if powers are present in a secret reality, can entities be present in this secret reality? Tune in next week and find out. Until next time, thank you for joining me, fellow philosophers. My name is Miguel Ángel Medina, and this has been Meditations.